will say this, that when there's two cooks, have you ever heard the slogan, like, you can never have two cooks in the kitchen?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Okay. So it's kind of like that. If there's two bosses and a corporation and they're on you're always going to, because one has a different perspective than the other one,
Yeah.
you're always going to kind of bump heads, and that it's going to be difficult, right? So it's not that women are not of value, not as important or anything. It's just that men and women were created with different attributes. If you guys have ever heard the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? It's a psychological doctor that has showed that there are differences between men and women. There are, and it's purposeful. And both represent a beautiful aspect of God. We were made in God's image.
Yeah.
And so when it's put together, it's very profound. But it's like, so the way I said, my husband is I've noticed, and it's not just with him, but with lots of other men too. It's like, they're more like the visionary, like they see the big picture.
Yes.
And then women are more like the practical detail, or not that men aren't detail oriented, but a lot of women are usually the detail oriented, practical one. And I'm like immersed in like the details of running my household with my kids and everything. And men can be that way too. I'm not saying that, but my husband will come home. It's like, I can't, like, I'm thinking about the next, well, I gotta go to the grocery, I gotta do this, I gotta call this person. And I'm thinking, but I don't know really what the big 6 months from now, 1 year, 2 year, I don't like have the vision of what's really, my husband does. So he'll be like, come home and, oh my gosh, look at this move that happened. Like, this is about to happen. This is about to happen. And like, it just gives me so much peace that he's on that forefront. He's the visionary for our family and our household, and he can see the horizon, he can see what direction we're moving in. And then I'm his helpmate, where I'm doing maybe the more practical side of it, the more detail oriented side of it. But we're both a team pushing it together. And so he values my opinion. Like, I might get discernment about something, or I might have like an insight about something that he doesn't see. And I'll share with him, and he weighs it, and it helps him. It says, you hear about, like, there's also a saying that says, behind every great president was a great woman. So there's a lot of importance in like in communicating these things, like both equally, right? But if there is a if there is like a decision to make, and like we can't make a decision, like somebody needs to like move forward with in one direction. But so we've weighed we've weighed our opinions and our insights. He's going to be my husband. I submit to him whatever his final say is, whatever he thinks, because I know that God's given him that type of understanding and perception, and that's how he's designed the family unit to work harmoniously. Like, I trust, even if he gets it, he might get it off, but God's going to honor me and still submitting to, like, at least there's one cook in the kitchen, and it's not two cooks battling in this disharmony and dissension. It's like, okay, well, even if you had us in a wrong direction, at least we're all going together in one direction, whether bad or good. But he's still validating me. He's still listening and values the things that I have to say, the insight. I'm praying for him every day as he goes back out into the marketplace or whatever he's doing. Like, I'm his backbone, And so I think if you look at it from that perspective, it's not like you see like, okay, that makes sense, because it is like the man and the woman do work in a harmonious way together. And when that's in order, the children have a stable place to thrive. And there's not like battling of opinions and dissension. Well, we should do this or we should do that. It's very conflicting to the children that are under that, right? It's when we have, it's just like a company or a corporation. If you have multiple bosses at the top level, like, the company wouldn't go anywhere. But at some end of the day, everybody has a part to play. But at some end of the day, somebody has to make the final decision. And so I believe that that's what the word says, is that the husband is going to be the final decision maker in the process. Oh, you are muted.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, this is I always say it's not a good stream if there's not a little bit of struggle. And I think I have certainly fulfilled up to that struggle piece. To my camera going out, my mic going out. So thank you for bearing with me. But like I said, no, I think you hit on some really, really, really great points. And this is, actually, I did a live a few days ago where I was looking at it, or what was it? What topic is masculinity harmful for women, right? And oftentimes what I've heard, anytime I hear women in particular who are very, very, very against the idea of submission, there's usually an element of fear behind it. And there's this a man, if I am to submit, or if I am to cooperate with a man, I by default am going to be abused. I by default am going to be taken advantage of. And so that's why I'm saying, it is important as a woman, first of all, like, I'm not saying you're supposed to just submit to any old random man. I'm not saying you go and marry a bum off the street and then, of course you want to be mindful, but it's like, especially you come together with a man under God, there is just a level of authority. And I will say, even if I look on just strictly, let's say I just look at YouTube and I look at the channels that are run by men and the channels that are run by women and the conversations that they have. And even the conversations I'm having with men versus women, we talk about different things. Let's just be honest. Women, we love talking about relationships generally, what's happening in our day-to-day life, how are we feeling, what's going on. You hear men, they're talking about politics. They're talking about the way the world is working. They're talking about jobs. They're talking about the economy. They're talking about the way things are made, because I think God made us like that. Generally, men are the ones who built society. Not to say women were not in places helping, but it's like, to your point, we are made differently. And I think when we understand that and respect that as women and know that there are aspects that God put in men that are beautiful and should be honored and respected, just like in women, then it doesn't have to be a competition. But I think for some reason, there are some of us, and I think this could be maybe a mixture of feminism. This could be a mixture of just the different things that propaganda we've heard on media and mainstream television or whatever. But it kind of pushes this idea of a gender role of like, oh, I can do everything a man can do, or I have to do everything a man can do. And it's like, no, it's okay to recognize that we as women do have certain limitations, and that can be sometimes for our safety and that can be for our benefit. It doesn't necessarily have to be for we're being oppressed or we're being silenced. It's like, no, God just made us different. And I think when we embrace that and recognize our place and recognize really where we do thrive and where we are strong, then it can become easier to work with our husbands or work with those people and recognize, hey, maybe he is seeing something differently. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's okay. We don't have to always see things the same way. And I think it becomes more of a balancing act, and it becomes more harmonious when you're not having to compete, when you're not feeling like you have to have the final say, because deep down inside, you're simply afraid. You're afraid of working with a man who you see is very imperfect. You know what I mean? And so, I think you hit the nail on the head there of just being like, at the core, men and women both represent unique aspects of God. And instead of us fighting against that, we embrace it. It's a beautiful harmony, So, good. So good. There. Again, guys, if you're on here, get those likes up, tag anybody, share this with someone who you think might find it interesting. I see GB in there dropping some scriptures. First Corinthians.
Thank you for the scripture, G. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because the husband has a more a heavier burden, because he has to submit to Christ. So he's going to be held accountable for leading us, the women, off the stray. He will be held accountable for that. So that's really good. That's a good, thank you for putting that scripture out.
That's another thing too. I think it's a good thing that you put the nail on the head on. People, I think in general, who are so adamant about trying to be in control, or if I, talk to women who are so adamant about trying to be in control or trying to lead or be the head, we forget that there is a higher level of responsibility and burden for leaders, whether it's being a leader in the church, whatever, like there's a higher burden. So it's like, I think sometimes, because sometimes when we can look on TV or we can look at different ways that they portray leaders, and you'd be like, oh wow, like they have this nice house or this nice car, all those accolades, and we can see that aspect of it, but we forget, especially if you're really a leader under God, it's like how that's really about you being a servant, and that's really about you laying your life down, and it's like, that's hard. So when you really understand, I think even the burden that the man carries within the context of marriage, it's like, do you really want to take that on? Do you really want to have the burden of having to lay your life down the way that God gives that burden to man? Do you really want that? Or do you just want to be like, okay, I need to make sure I respect, I need to make sure I honor, you know what I mean? Like,